Yeah, they're different. Sports Radio, The Ticket.
LaFours from the shotgun. Back to pass, has time, fires, intercepted by Boise State, and he could go. He's to the 20, 25, 30, got blockers. He's to the 40, the 50. Avalos with a blocker inside the 30. He's to the 20. He's going to score. Andy Avalos. Avalos 94 yards on the interception. And Boise State gets a touchdown and regains the lead. With 59 seconds left here in the first quarter, it's 9-7.
Probably one of the most talked about plays Boise State football history in a losing effort, Prater. They lost that bowl game New Year's Eve, 2004 on a Friday night, Prater. God, I wish I could have seen what you were up to that night.
I was on deadline and cranking out newspapers and worrying about that kind of nonsense, and had the whole crew in Memphis. Pretty cool deal, and yeah, that was a spectacular moment for Andy Avalos. And we're going to go down memory lane here a little bit. His last ever college football game. Certainly a way to go out. One of the more memorable Boise State football games of all time. 20 NFL players in that game.
Wow.
It was just a beast of a football game. Really competitive, really fun. I think it was, with all due respect to the UTEPs and the prior Louisville game and the Iowa States. That was Boise State's introduction to big boy football, I thought.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I remember they were supposed to go to the Humanitarian Bowl still, and it was like, we don't want to play here anymore. Remember, they had to finagle. They had to do moving and shaking, right, to even have this bowl. The Fort was it that was the Fort Worth Bowl. How'd they get in the Liberty Bowl? Is that still when the WAC had a tie-in? I'd have to go back and do the research. Not really here nor there, but Louisville was the opponent. Stephon LaFours was the quarterback. I remember there's a lot made about him, and I think he was legally deaf, Prater, if you remember that.
His parents were.
Okay, parents were. Brian Braun was the backup. But anyway, that was a magical moment for Andy Avalos, and what a call it was for Paul J.
That was the first. Boise State. That was their first touchdown of that game. They were down 7-3. Tyler Jones had gotten a field goal, and Boise State took a 3-0 lead. And then Stephon LaFours got a quick touchdown pass coming back. So there was about a minute and 10 seconds left in the first quarter, and they're driving. They're driving like crazy. They're on a 12-play drive where Stephon LaFours is really just. He completed all 4 passes on that drive. They were just marching down the field. They were looking like they were a really, really solid football team, and they were. And then all of a sudden, Andy Avalos stepped in front of that pass. Let's check out the national call. JP found this today, and you might recognize a couple of familiar voices.
Getting to get to the 5 for a first down. LaFours intercepted. Andy Avalos' second interception of the year. A convoy for Avalos. Picking up blocks. Andy Avalos, Boise State touchdown.
Yeah, I remember that voice. I watched that game. Prater, pretty good stuff.
Yeah, Kirk Herbstreit was on the call. I guess he didn't say much there. Unlike the other ridiculous commentator on the Bob Bueller call, just screaming and yelling in the background. But one was a pro, Paul J, that's right. One was a pro, one was, never mind. But yeah, that was really cool. He did have a convoy. He had like 4 or 5 players, and he had some pretty good speed. Again, Andy Avalos was a decent running back in high school, but he had been on the field for 12 consecutive plays. He had 3 solo tackles alone on that drive. As they were running the football an awful lot. I think 8 runs, 4 passes. They completed all 4 of those, and Avalos had 3 tackles, and then all of a sudden he steps in front of a pass and he made a fingertip catch. If you look at it, there's an angle on the TV replay of where they show it live, and then they show a replay, and it's from behind. He barely got his fingers on that sucker, but he had a full steam ahead. He said the whole thing came to him because he watched film all week long and knew exactly what was going on. He read their keys, took 1 step to his left, and then down the left sideline, he was gone.
Yeah, and for the people who are maybe new to the program or don't remember that game or whatever, just a player that Andy Avalos was, that was bittersweet. That was the last time Bronco Nation got to root for Andy Avalos, and he was one of the most popular players on that team in that era, Prater. I mean, they really did. And you covered that team and the Idaho Statesmen. You guys did such good coverage and stuff back then. And I remember watching it and getting to know and learn that program. And absolutely, he was such a fun player and people loved him. Definitely a beloved player there. And he doesn't love talking about it, though. And that probably surprises nobody who's covered him or knows him, right?
Yeah, here's Andy Avalos Monday. It took a couple of questions to get a couple of little tidbits out of him, but here's Andy Avalos asked twice on Monday at his press conference about that interception.
You know what? I haven't even thought about it. I haven't even thought about it. It's been a long time since the last time I was there, but it's part of the special deal of getting to play and coach. You get to go places you never would have went without being a part of this game. You get to meet people that you wouldn't have been able to meet without being a part of this game. And that's one thing too that, we talk to our players about all the time. This is a grind, and it takes being your best each and every day to continue to grow and become, what you're capable as an individual and as a team, but also they're the places you get to go. We obviously have a challenge of traveling across the country this week and going to a place that, a lot of guys on this team and in this program haven't been. That in itself is going to create challenges, whether it be travel or whatever it may be. But I haven't really thought specifically for myself. I've just been focused on the things that from one game going into the next game and the next opponent on what we need to do to be better.
What do you remember about that interception return now?
I was very tired. That is the one thing. I was very tired before it happened. It was at the end of a drive. I don't know how many plays into that drive we were, but I was very thankful I made it there, and I was very tired afterwards.
He got the only time he got hit on that play, it was in the end zone by his own teammates. And one of them, I couldn't figure out the number, whacked him upside the head. Here comes Gabe Franklin, giving him a big old bear hug in the back of the end zone. So it was pretty cool. He literally had 4 or 5 players, that convoy, running down the field, and they just swarmed him at the end. It was pretty cool to see.
Because you're right, it was one of those momentous plays because Louisville had just went up and down the field on them, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get this pick six and flip the score. And it was just, again, it was a massive moment. And that's one of the games that people talk about most with this program when they lost. And there's not a lot of those you talk about outside of that night in Reno. So we had other people we talked about it with too. Spencer Danielson, he talked to the media. We obviously wanted to get his thoughts. He was obviously not part of the program then, but Spencer Danielson, defensive coordinator, had this to say on Andy Avalos' magical interception return.
I'm trying to think when the last time we for sure showed it to our guys a couple times. I think it's actually on one of my LB highlights that I show some of the recruits. And I'm like, who is that? They're like, I have no idea. I'm like, well, that's the head coach you're about to go meet with here in a couple minutes. You know what I mean? But we show it to our guys a lot, regards to even just Coach Collins, who coached Coach Avalos, the defensive coordinator. He'll show it. But I think it's exciting to be able to go back there. And I'm sure that video will pop out here, one of these team meetings or defensive meetings as the week goes.
Good stuff, Spencer Danielson.
And then Markel Reed did kind of along those same lines of being forced. It's almost like child labor. He's being forced to watch the Andy Avalos. No, I'm joking, but they do show it an awful lot. Here's Markel Reed on how many times he's seen that video.
I've seen that clip a few times, and I know that was a really exciting moment for him, and especially because Av was a big-time player back then. That excites us all the time. That motivates us because our own head coach making plays, seeing that, and he was in the same uniform as us. So, it's always motivating and good to see some clips like that.
I liked hearing from Markel Reed yesterday, and I hope he has a good game in the season he's having. Some good stuff there. Hearing him talk about that interception, Prater. Great stuff. 208-424-9300. If you want to share any memory, were you at the game? Do you remember watching it? What do you have? We'll take a couple calls. Eric, you were at the game. You've told JP you wanted to get on and talk about it a little bit. Eric, welcome to Idaho Sports Talk. What you got?
Hey, I appreciate it. I was an Air Force recruiter in Central Florida, so we drove up and saw a bunch of Boise State games. One of those was the Louisville game. It was a great game. It was disappointing that we had a chance to win it that last drive, and it came up short. But I didn't know if you guys were tracking who was the halftime entertainment for that game.
halftime entertainment. Memphis, bleh, slippy, slappy, swami. Up with people.
It was Little Richard.
Wow, Prater.
Yeah, it was freaking great. I had no idea. They rolled him out, and he had a piano, and he just killed it. And it was a great time. A lot better than the following Georgia game that I went to while I was down in that area where I had to leave at halftime. But yeah, it was a great game, great halftime show, and that was when we were starting to come up, and being in the military and having to hear everybody dime in about Boise State, who's that, and what trash we were. That was the beginning with Hawkins, and then of course Pete shortly after that. So great time to be a fan. And Memphis, shady town, Bronco Nation. Be careful in Memphis where you go, where you eat, and go Broncos.
Great stuff, Eric. Appreciate the call. 208-424-9300. Prater, I forgot the Little Richard.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, me neither. I don't remember watching the halftime. I was probably chugging beers and smoking cigarettes at halftime that game. Or at least chugging beers.
Okay.
Let's say that. I was just a fan watching that game from my house, like Prater said, or like we said, it was New Year's Eve on a Friday night. And I like what Eric said about that team, because there still was this massive, who are these guys? What is this program? How long have they been? What league are they in? What blue field? That's about all I know I've heard of. That was a fun era, and so many great players and coaches were here at the right time, Prater, to really set this thing off. And heck yeah, look at the standard right now, and it's because of, I think, a lot of teams like that back in the day.
I just realized I told a big fat lie. I said I was in Statesman Cubicleville taking care of business, and I wasn't.
Now you remember where you were on New Year's Eve 2004.
I do. Because the next day I was in Tempe watching watching the Utah-Pittsburgh Fiesta Bowl.
Yes.
So I had taken that weekend off because don't remember all the controversy that because Louisville and Boise State were two top 10 football teams, and there was that Boise State Utah factor, who was going to play in that Fiesta Bowl, and a lot of issues on that. I had taken that weekend off actually, and first time I've taken a weekend off of a Boise State football game in a long time, and so I'd been in Tempe for a couple of days. Rainy Tempe. So
that was huge. That was the biggest game in like Utah football history at the point, right?
At that time, yeah. It was a big deal, and it certainly didn't register like the Fiesta Bowl did a couple of years later. But at the time, it was the BCS Buster stuff. And it was that whole crew of Smith and Meyer and Whittingham and Sanford and Dan Mullen and that whole crew. So
great staff.
Yeah, I probably watched that game. I don't remember watching that game now. I was probably drunk in a bar somewhere.
Yeah, you were probably watching that at a bar. And I'll tell you this, that Louisville team, by the way, JP's laughing. They played in Conference USA that year. Louisville was in CUSA. So obviously they were a group of five, which the term didn't even exist then. Their only loss, that Louisville team, was in Miami, who was an ACC team. Miami at the time was ranked third in the country, and they beat Louisville by 3 points. That was their only loss. So yes, Louisville fans were saying, hey, we should get to go to the Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, and play Pitt. That should be our bid. And Prater's Utah Utes were saying, no, we're undefeated.
Yeah.
So you can go stuff it. Yep. And that Utah team went undefeated that entire season, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's a hell of a run.
And I do remember, Louisville. I don't remember that Miami loss, but coming into that game, I remember doing some packages at the paper. They were averaging like the last 6 weeks of the season. I think they were averaging 60 points a game.
56, 55, 65, 70, 55, 44. That's how potent that offense was.
Wow. Number one in the nation at the time. And I think Boise State was number 2.
Gosh, what a bowl game that was. Again, we don't talk about a lot of losses in this town, but that's one of those games people look at and say, dude, it could have went either way. It was a tough one to lose, but I don't think the program was any better or worse if they would have won that game, if it would have done anything as opposed to losing. And I don't know.
JP, I want to hear Mike Tirico one more time. Hit that Mike Tirico button.
I want to hear Paul J.
Getting to get to the 5 for a first down. LaFours intercepted. And Andy Avalos' second interception of the year. A convoy for Avalos. Picking up blocks. Andy Avalos, Boise State touchdown.
Yeah, no added color on the TV copy. You wouldn't even know Kirk Herbstreit was on the call there. Interesting. That's our video segment. As always, is brought to you by the Dollar Loan Center. They've been funding loans at don'tbebroke.com for 25 years. They're quick, inexpensive, safe, regulated, and thrilled to be opening 16 locations right here in Idaho. So apply online for up to a $5,000 loan at don'tbebroke.com. Let's get after it, JP. Let's hop on them soapboxes.
This is Idaho Sports Talk with Prater in the Ballgame. Brought to you